Welcome to the Haven Hubcast, a place to learn what business leaders, owners, and professionals are doing to navigate and grow in today's market. Hear from industry experts on everything from marketing, leadership, financing, and more. Brought to you by Haven, a co-working space where you can connect, create, and get stuff done.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Haven Hubcast. I'm your host, Nancy Sheed, and I am very excited to be chatting today with Rhodie Lorenz. Welcome, Rhodie.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
For those of you who might not know or not heard of Rhodie, she is the co-founder and chief creative director of JoyRide Cycling Studios. A lot of us, fans of JoyRide or have friends that were fanatic fans of JoyRide. Rhodie, can you walk us the backstory? You were making fitness fun and community-based well before Peloton bikes and all that kind of stuff. Can you walk us through kind of your journey into how you came to be the founder of JoyRide Cycling Studios?
Sure. So I sort of fell into fitness as a career because my husband is now a cardiologist, but I met him when he was in medical school, and it's a very long track to establish a career in medicine between medical school and all of the training. And we had moved to Boston from California for his residency. And I had given up my job of teaching. I was a high school English teacher and was raising two boys in Boston. And I didn't have childcare because we didn't have any extra money to afford that. And so I had started spinning, indoor cycling, we call it now. But in California, I'd taken my first class. It was like around 1998, I think. And I loved it because I had been a runner for exercise and I love music. And so the combination of both of those, like the cardio and then the music and the community element, was just awesome. And so when we moved to Boston, I looked into getting certified, mainly because it gave me 2 hours of free childcare at the gyms I was teaching at, and I could take a shower without being interrupted. And so, my classes started to pick up and I started to teach at various studios, and all the places that I went were gyms that had childcare. And then we moved to Connecticut and I was pregnant with my third son, and I loved the flexibility of being able to teach fitness. And so I also got certified in Pilates. And so this was, kind of for a few years, it really fit my lifestyle. I loved the positivity of being in classes and people walking out sweaty and their endorphins are high and they're feeling like they can conquer their day. So I decided that our town doesn't have a cycling studio, and it was at the very brink of these kind of boutique studios moving out of large gyms. And I got this bee in my bonnet, as my husband will tell you, that this is what I wanted to do. With that said, I had no business experience. I had no business really starting this. One thing I did know, and I was seeking once the seed was planted, and this was an idea that I wanted to pursue, was that I needed to have a business partner. It was a lot in terms of both the financials, the business aspect of it. And I had reached out to a consultant. If you Googled at the time, and this was like 2010, boutique fitness studios, there was a guy named Bill Pryor whose name came up, and he had a studio in Boston. And he did some sort of financial forecasting and just sort of helped people if they were interested in starting a studio. And I was getting wheels in motion, and then I put it on the back burner because I was starting to look at space and just couldn't figure it out. And about 6 months after I had contacted him, a woman named Amy Hockhauser called me and said, I was just working with Bill Pryor. I'm interested in opening a cycling studio in Westport. And he mentioned that you had contacted him. And I'm a former lawyer. I'm interested in running the business part. And I understand that you do fitness. And I was even Googling who I might hire for my studio, and your name came up. And at first I'm like, well, she's not opening a cycling studio. I am, And then it turned out to be, we met and had coffee. And I literally think like 4 months later, we opened our studio. She had been in the works. We had a third partner named Debbie Katz, who was also on board. And I think that so much of our success has to do with the complementary skill set that we brought to it, because I was very excited and wanted to create a particular kind of like fitness experience for the people who came, because I taught at a lot of places. And so I was, I had experience of what things worked well and what things didn't work well. And then Amy really brought, like, she negotiated leases. She had been a lawyer and she's very technologically savvy and was like setting up our programs. And I think bringing those two things together is a huge part of what made JoyRide successful and what it was.
I love that Google gets a lot of credit for your all's coming together, right? Like you could say it was Kismet, but you could also say that a lot of Google gets a lot of credit for some of these connections before this was really, I mean, in all fairness, before this was a thing, before it had shifted, before we'll get onto that.
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned the partnerships, and that's one of the, to partner or not to partner is one of the questions that comes up a lot when we're talking to entrepreneurs about their journey. And there are pros and cons, of both. And when it goes well, you can only see, you mostly see most of the pros, but I think also identifying what strengths people bring, and I won't say weaknesses, but what the strengths that everybody brings to make it a more powerful experience. When you were starting, was it a matter of like, okay, you do this, I do this, or was it a matter of working together and your skill sets kind of fell into place?
I think it was pretty clear from when we met what we each brought to the table. With that said, I think with any new venture and any small business, you end up wearing many hats. And so we did do the exercise before we started, or in the beginning stages, like roles and responsibilities and who was doing what. So we had clarity on that. And there was always a role and responsibility that you weren't expecting. And we both worked the desk shifts, and we both worked with the bike maintenance guy and met with the accountants and the finance, like all of those things. There was a lot of overlap, but I think that in the big picture, we were pretty clear about who's doing what.
And again, because you were so kind of on the front end of this, right? Like, I mean, gyms had been around, right? But this isn't something where, again, it's just you, one person who's teaching a class. Now we're into rent space. Now we're into physical equipment. Now we're into staff that we have to hire. Like, there's so many more components to this. In terms of putting a business plan together, did you have a model? Did you say, this is what we think is going to happen? Or, from the consultant, or was Amy ahead of that, in terms of what this was going to look like? And I'll just start with that question in terms of one studio, right? Like, how did that go?
Yeah, I think we did. We had a business model and we had some financial, it felt a little like alchemy, because it was like, well, this is what we would like to happen. And it was the first time for all of us.
Right. Well, that's my question. Like, there was no template, right? Like, you were making it up.
There was no template. We had heard that you should write a business plan. So we wrote a business plan, and we heard that you should have the financials and like, how many bikes what are we going to charge? Here's our rent. We got to cover these expenses. And so we went through those as exercises, and we tapped into advisors and people who we felt were smart and would give us good tips or tell us if we were completely off base. And we did that throughout. And in the beginning in particular, people were excited about what we were doing and they were happy to help.
I love that. When people see your enthusiasm, I think it's hard for them not to get involved. So 4 months or so after meeting Amy, you're in your alchemy stage, and you're like, oh my gosh, now we're having a grand opening, and we're open. It is the first JoyRide Cycle Studio, right?
Right.
I mean, day 2, where you're like, all right, what's next? What was kind of from opening? I kind of want to walk into stages from opening, right, day to, hey, this is working. More people want more JoyRide. We need to have more studios. What was that trajectory?
We were pretty successful out of the gate. And I credit that both to there really was, and I think there was a bar studio in Westport at the time. And it was really in the time of bigger gyms. So a standalone boutique studio that really focused on like one or two modalities of fitness just were not really around. And while indoor cycling was popular, there was a lot of disparity when you went to a gym. If you went to the 8:30 a.m. or the noon class, like what the instructor was, there was not that level of consistency. And so that was one thing that we were really intentional about. Like I put together a training manual and all the instructors were teaching the same method, which evolved over time, but it was really important to have that consistency. And so people just brought their friends and started showing up, and it became very community oriented. I mean, the number of times after I taught a class that I would spend another hour talking to people from the class. And it was just a very organic, friendly place. One of the things that I loved about indoor cycling from the first time I took a class was how inclusive it is, in the sense that people go at their own pace. It does have an intimidation factor, hardcore workout, and it is and can be, but you can also come if you haven't been to a gym in 10 years and you can sit on the bike and slowly add your resistance. And so what I loved, and unlike a lot of other group fitness experiences where everyone has to be doing the same moves, or everyone has very heavy weights, or it was a dark room, people could go at their pace and build it up. And so one of the things that I know Amy and I are most proud of is that it was a very inclusive community. And we really tried to take that intimidation factor out of it. So once we were selling out classes, and it was on Sunday was the sign up for the week. And it was like by Sunday, a few hours after the window opened, all of our classes would be sold out. I mean, it was like,
okay,
beyond my dreams. I was like, oh my gosh, so I really wanted to open a studio. And then it caught fire for a little while. Pretty quickly, I would say in the first 6 to 9 months, we were talking about potentially opening another studio, and Darien ended up being that place.
Did people approach you, or did you there were people sort of like, are you going to open another one? Were you surveying, your clients in terms of what was a strategic space, or was it a matter of you were looking for space and you kind of figured out how that would work best?
So it was actually a little bit of both. As far as Darien, we found that location and decided to open there. We had a couple of residents from Ridgefield who had heard about us and drove all the way down from Ridgefield to take classes in Westport. And they said, oh my gosh, Ridgefield has nothing like this. It would kill it there. We love the community and classes. So we ended up around the same time that we were opening Darien. We had just done another capital raise to get money to open the Darien studio. We're like, we don't have the money, but we decided to license the studio. So within a few years, we had Ridgefield opened as a licensed studio, and then the same owners opened in Wilton as a licensed studio, which was great because it allowed us to expand more rapidly without having to raise more capital to do that.
The capital. Well, and I was going to say, what was also happening, so we're talking 2011, 2012, right? So social media is really also starting to kind of take off. How did that help you in terms of building was that part of your marketing strategy? Was it kind of a side piece that happened? I mean, I can tell you the first time I ever heard about JoyRide Studio was through friends who did it. And again, just the camaraderie and the things they were sharing. What was it like on the other side? Was it organic? Was it we should be smart about this? Or how did it feel on your side as it was taking off and you're trying to figure out what to do?
Yeah, I think it was very organic. I don't think that we could have anticipated the influence that social media had or would have. And so it was a great way for us to get our message out, let people know what our culture was like. We had a really strong community and a very active community. So a lot of riders would post on our behalf. So yeah, social media became probably, as far as marketing, the number one tool.
And Yeah. I mean, like I said, that's how I knew about you. And it was
Yeah.
mostly through people who were less about your content and more about what other people were posting and how excited they were and their friends and the instructors and the
Exactly.
community. And so you grew, you're sort of ahead of the curve in this boutique sort of fitness. And then the terrible pandemic sets in and we're not allowed to leave and go anywhere. What was the impact for you, either short term or long term, Rhodie, in terms of like what life looked like, in March 2020 versus getting through the pandemic and how you had to sort of make decisions with regard to your business?
Yes, it was a lot.
I know that's a loaded question. I know it's a loaded question.
No, it was. And I think just as it was in the beginning, there was no playbook for how to execute this. And then the pandemic was sort of the epitome of that. And not just for our business, but many, as well as school and lifestyle, like everybody was living in this uncertainty. I think there were several main factors that created huge obstacles for us. And those included that the landscape of fitness from where we had started to fast forwarding to 2020, there was just so much more competition. So Peloton was around, and I think somebody told me the other day, Westport alone has something like 16 or 17 boutique fitness studios in it. So the competition and the other options. And with that said, almost all of them that I can think of are national brands and chains.
Yeah.
And that's just a different competition than a local two moms running a business scenario. So that was one of the factors. And then we were legally mandated by the state to close. We had different landlords at all of our locations. And so you're sort of navigating that. Some are supportive and want to help you get through this. Others are like, hey, there's nothing written in the lease about a pandemic and who's going to pay us too? Like, we're all in a challenging situation. So being closed, paying some rents, not all of the rents, just so much uncertainty. And then once we were allowed to open, then it was 6 feet apart. People were wearing masks. I mean, I get it. People are fearful. Like, I don't, so we did open some of the studios. Some we couldn't open. We had staff that said they couldn't come. They had a sick parent or child, understandably. So it was sort of a case by case basis with the studios. And we navigated as well as we could. Some of the studios did not reopen after they were mandated to close. And then the ones that we tried to keep going, I mean, we pulled out all the stops. We pulled the bikes outside. And then our neighbors started complaining because we were blasting music. So then we got the silent disco headphones. And we had people, I mean, we were doing this in like January, February. Like people were like in their ski gear and pedaling a bike. And, so I mean, it just makes me so proud that our staff showed up and our instructors and our loyal riders who were like, we love
they wanted
you.
The community.
They want
the community.
So it was really an epic effort. And in the end, it just felt insurmountable to be able to get back on track from where we were. And, we were hit by some significant costs with some of the leases and just running the business without the revenue coming in.
Well, I'm very much appreciating your focus on the things that you're proud of and the inclusive and the community that you built. What was kind of your biggest, aside from being successful out of the gate, that was a pleasant surprise? What was your other biggest sort of surprise or running a business takeaway that you either, you wished you would have known, or knowing that now you will carry forward in your next adventure?
That is a good question.
It can be bad or good.
Yeah. I mean, I would say a good one pops to mind first. And I would say that is, and this would be sort of more even like a message to other people starting a business or entrepreneurs, is like trusting yourself. I think that there were a lot of times where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing and I should ask the experts on this. And looking back, I'm like, yeah, but as a result, I did it differently and we did it differently and we were unique and stood out for the exact reason that we didn't follow the playbook of another type of studio. And we didn't make things cookie cutter. And we wanted people to have a very personable experience.
Yeah.
And, who we hired spoke to that. And so, I think we're always like doubting certain decisions we make because entrepreneurship is a very fast paced and you have to be decisive about things. And we definitely looked at each other sometimes or like, I don't know if that was the right thing. And sometimes it was and sometimes it wasn't. But it's through that whole journey and experience, I think, that we start to learn to trust ourselves a little bit more.
Well, and I love that feeds into what you're doing now, right? So is Rhodie Lorenz coaching. Can you talk a little bit more about, it sounds like you've taken a lot of these life lessons in terms of being able to share them or be a little bit ahead of the curve with people who are working on their businesses. What does that look like to you now?
Yeah, so I pivoted and I feel like in my heart, I am like a teacher and a coach. That is what lights me up the most. And after we closed JoyRide, I was sitting in uncertainty and going from very busy and often stressful days to not having a place to go to work. And so I had to kind of spend some time, and I decided to get my certification in executive leadership coaching. And I view it as an extension in a lot of ways of what excited me about coaching in fitness. And a lot of that has to do with like building routines where people can really tap into their greater potential. And there's such a connection between physical and mental strength. And I saw on a daily basis people being very inspired by the strength that they were gaining in the studio that then seeped into other aspects of their life and gave them a renewed confidence that if they could do this hard thing in the studio, sweat it out for 50 minutes, they started to rely on this belief that they could do these other things outside the studio too. And so business coaching for me is very much in that vein. And so much of this stuff is mindset. And I really get so excited when people kind of open doors to another level of their potential and challenge some of those. Like, I could never do that. I'm like, I have totally said that line myself.
Right.
And I've put it aside and I've tried things. And I think we're all capable of incredible things. And I love being on part of people's journey to discover that.
And are you specializing in people in the physical fitness world? I mean, is that happening, or it sounds like when you say executive coaching, it's running a gamut?
I know. Well, so it's been something that I've been navigating because I'm trying to figure out where do I best fit? Where can I be most helpful and kind of be a good fit in that vein? And I've landed for now on female entrepreneurs. So I feel like that's my jam. Female entrepreneurs juggle a whole lot between family and business stuff and just for what we bring. And I would love to support females at those stages. I know that it would have been tremendously valuable to me. I didn't know that things like that were out there.
Right.
So I think it would have made things probably more efficient and maybe saved a few headaches along the way too.
Yeah. Well, and also, like I said, you were so on the kind of the cutting edge of a lot of things. That was before there was a Haven around, right? That was before, and luckily you had great partners. But, well, we're thrilled that you're Haven's very excited for you to be part of the Haven community, and their jam is female entrepreneurs. So excited to see and learn more about what you're doing. If people are interested in learning more about how they could work with you, what's the best way to reach you?
Sure. You could find me. My website is just rhodielorenz.com. It's my first and last name.
Awesome.
So you could reach out to me that way. I'm also on LinkedIn as Rhodie Lorenz and Instagram as well. So
Awesome.
Any of those channels would be great. And I would love to hear from people.
Awesome. Well, that's the best way to connect. Rhodie, thank you for your time. Appreciate your journey into how you got to where you are now, and excited to see what's next and how you're sharing sort of your experience and wisdom and sageness with others as well. And we will put all this information in the show notes. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Nancy.
Certainly my pleasure. And that's another episode of the Haven Hubcast. Thanks for listening. If you like what you hear, please make sure to share this with others. Give us a rating if you haven't, and check to subscribe.
Thanks for listening to the Haven Hubcast, a place to learn what business leaders and owners are doing to navigate and grow in today's market. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Haven is a co-working space and virtual community located in the heart of Fairfield County, Connecticut. Haven is a hub for business owners and professionals to connect, create, and get stuff done. Find out more about the Haven community online at haven.com. That's HAYVN.com. Haven Hubcast is produced by Sound Advice Strategies.